Chapter 1, The hum of Titan Nexus Station, was constant, almost calming, an unbroken rhythm of life that had become routine. The station was a marvel of human ingenuity, a symbol of intergalactic progress. Located on the outskirts of Kali territory, it was a hub for diplomacy, commerce, and research. Yet, despite its peaceful purpose, the air on board had always been thick with tension, like a storm waiting to break. Captain Lucas Hale stood in front of the wide observation window, gazing out at the endless stars. His hands were clasped behind his back, posture rigid as he reviewed the final preparations for the peace treaty he had been tasked with overseeing. The Earth Federation and the Kali Empire were on the brink of a fragile agreement, an alliance that could secure humanity's future in the galaxy. But Lucas knew better than anyone that peace, especially between two such radically different civilizations, was always precarious. "You're quiet today, Captain," came the voice of Lieutenant Mara Dre, his second-in-command. She stood a few feet behind him, watching him closely. Lucas didn't need to look at her to know she was studying him, waiting for a sign of unease. He turned to her, his expression unchanged. "Just thinking," he replied curtly. "The treaty, the implications. This could either be humanity's future or our downfall." Mara raised an eyebrow. "You sound like you're already anticipating failure." Lucas shook his head. "I'm preparing for every possible outcome." He paused, turning back toward the window. "Failure is always an option, Mara. That's what keeps us sharp." Before she could respond, the intercom buzzed, slicing through the silence. "Captain Hale, your presence is required in the briefing room." The voice of the station commander, Admiral Klein, crackled through. Lucas nodded. "I'll be there shortly." He turned to Mara with a grim smile. "I'll be damned if something goes wrong, but I'm prepared to make sure we're ready for it." The briefing room was only a few corridors away, and when Lucas entered, he immediately felt the change in the atmosphere. A sense of urgency hung in the air, a heaviness that was impossible to ignore. Admiral Klein, along with a few high-ranking officers, stood around the large holographic table displaying a map of Titan Nexus and surrounding space. "Captain Hale," Klein began, his voice clipped. "We've intercepted some troubling communications from the Kali delegation." Lucas stepped forward, immediately on alert. "What kind of communications?" The Admiral gestured to the screen, where a series of encrypted messages flickered in and out. "It's not clear yet, but there's talk of sabotage, agents within the station conspiring to disrupt the peace talks. I've sent a few teams to investigate, but we're in the dark. We need to be prepared." Lucas's jaw tightened. Sabotage, a direct attack on the very foundation of what they were trying to accomplish. He glanced at Mara, whose eyes met his with equal concern. "What's the plan?" Lucas asked, his voice now steely with resolve. "We're increasing security protocols," Klein replied, "but you and your team will remain on high alert. The Kali envoy, Princess Zura, is arriving soon. If anyone can help us find answers, it's her." Lucas nodded, but something gnawed at him. The Kali were a proud and secretive species. Zara, the Kali princess, would hardly be forthcoming. They were about to walk a fine line between diplomacy and distrust. Still, the mission had to be completed. He couldn't afford to let doubts cloud his judgment. As the meeting ended, Lucas turned to Mara. "We'll be ready for whatever comes." The ship's corridors were still as Lucas made his way toward the hangar. The station's bustling atmosphere had faded, replaced by the quiet hum of anticipation. The arrival of the Kali envoy was a turning point. Whatever happened next, it would either forge a new alliance or send them into an abyss of conflict. As he entered the hangar, the air grew tense. A sleek, silver transport ship had just docked. A delegation of Kali soldiers flanked the entrance, and Lucas's gaze narrowed as he spotted her, the one person who could tip the balance. Princess Zara. She stepped out of the ship with an almost regal grace. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the room, not missing a single detail. Her presence alone was commanding, both beautiful and terrifying. The long, flowing silver robes of her people shimmered as she moved. She was everything Lucas had expected and more, intimidating, yet oddly captivating. "Princess Zura," Lucas said, stepping forward to greet her. Her gaze flicked toward him, her lips curving into a polite smile. "Captain Hale," she replied with a soft, almost musical tone. "It is an honor to finally meet the one who speaks for humanity." The formality hung in the air, thick with unspoken words. Zara's eyes didn't waver as she sized him up, just as he did her. Lucas noticed the subtle tension in her posture. She wasn't just here for peace talks. She was here for something more. "Likewise," Lucas said, offering a stiff nod. "I hope we can work together to ensure the future of our two peoples." Zara's eyes briefly flickered to the side, where her guards had taken up positions. The shift was almost imperceptible, but Lucas caught it. Something wasn't right. As if on cue, the alarms blared through the station. "Captain, we have an emergency. It's the sabotage." The voice of one of the officers crackled through his communicator. The room erupted into chaos. Lucas's heart rate spiked as the familiar sound of blasts rang out from somewhere deeper in the station. Security forces scrambled, and Zara's face betrayed nothing, though her eyes were alert, scanning the room for the threat. Without thinking, Lucas reached out and grabbed her arm. "Stay close. We're evacuating now," he ordered. Zara stiffened but didn't resist. Together, they dashed through the hangar, heading toward the nearest safe exit. Explosions shook the walls, and the ground beneath their feet trembled as blaster fire erupted in the distance. As they rounded a corner, Lucas saw a group of his men engaging with the attackers. The situation was quickly deteriorating. "We need to move, Captain," Zara said, her voice calm but insistent. "There's no time." Lucas hesitated, then nodded. "Stay behind me." With Zara in tow, they moved through the chaos. Every step felt like an eternity, but Lucas kept his focus, blocking out the panic. The mission had just changed. There would be no peace talks today. Now, they were fighting for survival. In the chaos of Titan Nexus, Lucas could no longer distinguish friend from foe. The future of humanity, and his own, was hanging in the balance. The chaos of the attack on Titan Nexus had been a blur. Explosions, blaster fire, and panic cries filled the air, but now, in the aftermath, everything had fallen eerily silent. Lucas Hale stood in a dark corridor of the station, his breath shallow from the sprint through the wreckage. His thoughts were clouded with questions, but one thing was clear. The mission had taken an unexpected turn. Beside him, Princess Zura moved with quiet grace, her silver robes trailing slightly behind her as she kept pace. Despite the dangers they'd just escaped, she remained composed, too composed, Lucas thought. She wasn't like the other Kali he had encountered, cold, distant, and unapproachable. Most members of her race were intensely prideful. Zara, however, carried an aura of restraint, as if her every move was calculated. "We need to get to the secure command center," Lucas said, his voice sharp with urgency. His hand rested lightly on the blaster at his hip. He hadn't needed it yet, but that could change in an instant. Zara nodded, her gaze unwavering as she looked forward. "I know the way. Follow me." There was no time to argue, and Lucas didn't want to waste precious moments. They had just crossed paths with a rogue faction of Kali extremists, those who wanted to sabotage the peace talks. The mission, which had once been about diplomacy, had quickly turned into a fight for survival. But it wasn't just the sabotage Lucas was worried about. It was Zara. She was the key to everything, and yet he couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. As they moved deeper into the station, the hum of the damaged walls and the faint whir of failing systems became a constant background noise. The air smelled faintly of smoke, and the occasional flicker of damaged lights added a sense of unease to the already tense atmosphere. Finally, they reached the command center, a dimly lit room surrounded by a few trusted officers. The door hissed open, and Lucas stepped inside, instantly surveying the scene. The room was full of holographic displays, blinking red alerts, and worried faces. "Captain, we've lost contact with 2 of our other teams," one of the officers reported, his face pale. "The sabotage was more coordinated than we thought. There are still pockets of resistance scattered throughout the station." Lucas turned to Zura, who had remained silent since they entered. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice tight with suspicion. "You were supposed to be a diplomatic envoy, not a target. How did you get caught in this mess?" Zara's piercing eyes met his, and for a brief moment, he saw something flicker, something more than the composed facade she had shown so far. "I don't know," she said, her voice uncharacteristically soft. "But I can tell you this, the attack was no accident. Someone within my empire wants this peace to fail." Lucas didn't trust her. He couldn't. Not yet. But there was no time for that now. "Then we're both in the same boat," he muttered. "Your empire, my people, none of us are safe while this is going on." The officer who had reported earlier spoke again, his voice strained. "Sir, we've detected an encrypted signal coming from inside the station. It's Fkali in origin, but it's too scrambled to decode. We suspect it's from the rogue faction." Lucas clenched his fists. "We need to find them. Now." Zara spoke up then, her voice calm but insistent. "The rogue faction is not working alone," she said. "I suspect they have allies, others who wish to see humanity destroyed, or at least weakened. The Fkali are divided, Captain, but the extremists have supporters, even within my own court." Lucas studied her closely, unsure of whether to trust her. "What are you saying?" She hesitated before answering. "What you don't understand, Captain, is that the peace talks aren't just about alliances and treaties. They're about power. My people, the Fkali, are in the middle of a power struggle. The extremists view your race as a threat to that power. They will do anything to destroy the peace." Lucas thought for a moment. If what she was saying was true, it meant there were far greater stakes than he had initially realized. But he couldn't let his guard down. Not now. Not when he had no idea who to trust. "I'm not in the habit of trusting people based on their word alone," Lucas said, his voice steady. "But if we're going to stop this sabotage, we need to work together. I'll give you that chance. But make no mistake, Zara. This alliance is temporary. If I find out you're hiding something, it's over." Zara's expression remained unreadable, but there was a flicker of something, maybe respect, in her eyes. "Fair enough, Captain. I'm here to stop this, just as you are." Lucas glanced at the officer standing at the comm station. "What's our next move?" The officer looked up, his face grim. "We've traced the signal to a maintenance level. It's a substation that controls the lower sections of the station. If we don't stop it soon, they'll have control over the entire station's power grid. We'll be sitting ducks." Lucas nodded. "Let's move out. Zara, you're with me." Zara didn't hesitate. "Lead the way." They moved quickly through the corridors, Lucas leading the way with Zara at his side. The sounds of distant blaster fire echoed through the station, but they remained focused on their objective. The deeper they went, the more the station seemed to feel like a maze. Narrow corridors, flickering lights, and doors that led to places that hadn't been used in years. Finally, they reached the substation. The door was locked, but Lucas knew it wouldn't keep him out for long. He pulled out his blaster and shot the lock. The door creaked open, revealing a dark, cavernous space filled with exposed wires and control panels. "There," Zara pointed, her eyes narrowing. "That's the control terminal. It's linked to the station's central systems." Lucas moved toward it, but just as he reached for the terminal, a voice echoed from the shadows. "You shouldn't have come here." Lucas spun around, raising his blaster. From the darkness emerged a figure, tall, clad in dark armor, his face obscured by a helmet. "The rogue faction's leader." "I should have known," Lucas muttered under his breath. "You've been playing both sides, haven't you?" The figure chuckled, the sound distorted through the helmet. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, Captain. This isn't about peace. This is about survival." The figure stepped forward, his weapon aimed at them. Without hesitation, Lucas raised his blaster. "Then we'll see whose survival wins." Zara, standing at Lucas's side, glanced at him briefly, her expression unreadable. The uneasy alliance had just turned into a battle for their lives. The rogue leader's voice echoed off the station's cold metal walls, distorting with every word. "You're too late," he hissed, his figure advancing from the shadows, a dark silhouette against the blinking lights of the substation's control panels. Lucas didn't flinch. His instincts kicked in, training took over. His grip tightened on the blaster, but Zara, standing just behind him, spoke first. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with quiet suspicion. "You hide in the shadows like a coward and call yourself a leader?" The figure stopped a few paces away, the low hum of the station's failing systems the only sound between them. He seemed unfazed by Zara's sharp words, his eyes gleaming through the dark visor of his helmet. "I have no name, and no need for one," the rogue leader replied. "The peace you seek was never meant to happen, Zara. Humanity is not meant to share the galaxy." Lucas shot a glance at Zara. Her face remained calm, but there was something in her eyes, something Lucas couldn't place. She knew this man, or at least, she had an idea of what he represented. He had to be someone significant within the Kali ranks. "You're part of the faction trying to undermine the peace talks," Lucas said, voice steady. "That much is obvious." The rogue leader chuckled, a dark sound that filled the empty space. "You're right, Captain, and I'm not alone. There are many like me. Those who believe your kind is a threat to everything we've built." He took a step forward, and Lucas kept his blaster aimed at him. Zara stepped in front of Lucas, as though to shield him, and for a moment, Lucas felt an unfamiliar sense of unease. She didn't move because she was afraid, but because she was calculating. She was, in some strange way, protecting him. "You're a fool," she said, her voice calm but tinged with disdain. "What do you think will happen once the peace is destroyed? A war that will swallow both our peoples? The extremists in your empire can't see beyond their own hatred." The rogue leader's stance shifted. He uncrossed his arms and tilted his head, his expression unreadable beneath the helmet. "You misunderstand, Princess. This isn't about hatred. It's about survival. Your people don't belong here. Humanity's presence in the galaxy will weaken us. We've watched you for years, expanding, probing, and now you come to us with your so-called peace. You think we'll just let you take what's ours?" Lucas exchanged a glance with Zara, who stood firm, though a flash of something, perhaps doubt, crossed her features. The rogue was relentless, but it seemed his words struck a chord. Perhaps not in her, but in the foundations of her people's beliefs. "I'm not here to take anything," Lucas shot back. "We're here to protect Earth and its colonies, to survive alongside the other species, not dominate them." The rogue leader's eyes flashed. "You will dominate, Captain. You've already begun. You can't hide behind diplomacy forever." Zara's eyes narrowed. She turned to Lucas with a look that made him pause. It wasn't just the rogue leader they were dealing with. It was a deeper issue, one that ran within the veins of the Kali Empire itself. This was bigger than them, bigger than the sabotage. This was about the future of every race in the galaxy, and the rogue knew it. Lucas looked back at the rogue, his voice cold. "You're wrong about us, and you're wrong about Zara." The rogue leader sneered. "Wrong? Am I? Then tell me, Captain, what's your plan once I activate the weapon that will cripple the station's power grid? Do you think you can stop me with your blasters?" Before Lucas could respond, Zara moved. Faster than he thought possible, she pulled a small device from the folds of her robes and pressed a button. A low hum filled the room, followed by a burst of static from the rogue leader's helmet. He staggered back, clutching at the helmet as the signal interference made it impossible to see or hear properly. For a brief moment, the room was plunged into chaos. "What the hell?" Lucas began, but Zara was already moving, grabbing his arm. "We need to act now," she said, urgency in her voice. She pushed him toward the terminal, the place where the rogue leader had intended to unleash his sabotage. "Zara, what did you just do?" Lucas asked, his mind racing. "A signal jammer. It's short-lived, but it buys us time. We need to get to the core of the sabotage," she explained quickly as they moved past the disoriented rogue leader, who was still trying to regain his bearings. They reached the terminal just as the rogue leader's blaster snapped to life. The weapon discharged with a loud crack, and Zara instinctively shoved Lucas to the ground. The blast missed them by inches, but the force of the shot rocked the terminal. Sparks flew from the panel. The rogue leader was regaining his composure. "You'll regret this," he growled, but his words were interrupted by a sharp, commanding voice from behind. "Enough!" Lucas turned just in time to see several Kali soldiers entering the room. They were heavily armed, their cold eyes scanning the situation. Among them was a woman, tall and imposing, dressed in royal garb. Her eyes locked onto Zara, filled with a mix of disbelief and fury. "Mother," Zara murmured, her face paling slightly. The woman, who could only be Zara's mother, the queen of the Kali Empire, strode forward. She raised a hand, signaling her soldiers to lower their weapons. "This is treason," the queen said, her voice low but powerful. "You betrayed your own people, Zara." Zara stood, her posture defiant. "I'm not betraying anyone. I'm trying to save us all from the destruction you and your faction seek. If you can't see that, you've sided with the humans." The queen spat, her gaze flickering to Lucas. "This peace will not stand. It will fail. I'll see to it that it does." Lucas was caught in the center of storm, watching as two opposing forces, one human and one alien, faced off. And in the midst of it all, Zara was caught between duty and her own beliefs. She was no longer just the envoy. She was a symbol of resistance, both within her own empire and to the humans who sought peace. The rogue leader smirked, knowing the conflict had just escalated beyond anything they had anticipated. Lucas's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "I don't care about your empire's politics. We stop this sabotage now, or none of us survive." Zara's eyes met his, and for the first time since the chaos began, there was a flicker of hope in them. They were running out of time. The future of both humanity and the Kali Empire rested on the fragile decisions of a few. The tension in the air was palpable. The command center, once a hub of calm diplomacy, had now become a battlefield, and Lucas could feel the weight of it pressing down on him. He stood at the center of the room, eyes locked on the holographic displays as the countdown to the rogue faction's weapon drew ever closer. The room buzzed with activity as his officers scrambled to monitor the breach in the station's power grid, but their efforts felt increasingly futile. The time to act was running out. Beside him, Zara was still, her regal composure slipping for the briefest moment. Her hands were clasped tightly, and though her face remained stoic, Lucas could see the storm behind her eyes, the same storm that had raged within her when they first met. There was more at play than just sabotage. The rogue faction's weapon wasn't just a threat to the station. It was the key to their ultimate plan, destruction. "Zara," Lucas said, his voice low but urgent. "This weapon they've set up, it's not just about disabling the power grid, is it? They want to do more than that." She met his gaze. Her silence was all the confirmation he needed. "Yes," she admitted, her voice tight. "The weapon is designed to do more than cripple Titan Nexus. It's capable of destabilizing the entire region of space. The Kali Empire has control over many trade routes and sectors in this part of the galaxy. If they destroy the power here, it will create a ripple effect, an economic and military collapse." Lucas didn't flinch. He had always known that the stakes were high, but this was something else entirely. "How long do we have before it's activated?" he asked, his eyes narrowing as he calculated the odds. "A few hours at most," Zara replied, looking away as though she couldn't bear the weight of the truth. "The rogue faction is too entrenched. They've already begun spreading their influence throughout the station. The weapons core is in the lower levels, where they've installed a failsafe. If they're not stopped, they'll use it to trigger a cascade of destruction that no one will be able to reverse." Lucas's mind raced. The weapon had to be disabled, but he knew that getting to it would be no easy task. It was buried deep within the station, in a section he had never even been authorized to enter. And the rogue faction wasn't just guarding it. They were actively pushing to escalate the destruction. "We're running out of options," Lucas said, taking a deep breath. He turned to his officers, who were still working furiously at their stations. "Gather what teams you can. We're going in after the weapon." A chorus of reluctant nods followed. Mara, Lucas's second-in-command, stepped forward. "Captain, it's too risky. The substation is locked down tight. Even if we breach it, we can't guarantee we'll be able to stop the weapon once we get inside." "I know," Lucas said, locking eyes with her. "But if we don't try, this entire station and every colony around it will burn." He looked back at Zara. "We're going in, but I need your help. The rogue faction is going to have eyes everywhere, and I don't know the layout of their systems. You do. You know their tech better than anyone. Help us, and we'll stop this." Zara hesitated, a flicker of something in her eyes, something beyond the cold calculation she had shown before. Her eyes softened, just for a moment. "I'll help you," she said finally, her voice determined. "But you need to understand something, Lucas. The Vkali Empire will never forgive me for this. I'm walking away from everything, from my own people, to do what is right." Lucas felt a pang of sympathy, but there was no room for hesitation now. The future of the galaxy hung in the balance. He gave her a small nod. "We'll deal with that later." The group quickly formed a plan, and as the officers mobilized, Lucas and Zara led the charge toward the depths of the station. The corridors seemed endless as they moved through the labyrinthine lower levels of Titan Nexus. The hum of malfunctioning lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows on the walls. Every corner they turned, every door they passed, felt like it could be a trap waiting to spring. As they reached the sublevel housing the rogue faction's weapon, the air grew colder. Zara's presence was commanding, but Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. It wasn't just the soldier station here. It was something more. The air was thick with tension, as if the walls themselves were closing in. "We're close," Zara whispered, her voice barely audible. "It's just beyond this door." Lucas nodded and signaled to his team to take position. The plan was simple: breach the door, neutralize the rogue faction's guards, and disable the weapon. But as with any plan in warfare, simplicity was an illusion. Mara stepped forward, pulling a small device from her belt. "Breach in 3, she said, pressing a button. The door hissed open, and they stormed in. The room they entered was vast, dimly lit with glowing red panels lining the walls. In the center stood a massive device, its core thrumming with energy, encased in a series of reinforced panels. The rogue faction's soldiers stood in position around it, weapons aimed. "You're too late," a voice boomed from the shadows. The rogue leader, now fully armored and ready for the confrontation, stepped into the light. Lucas's hand instinctively reached for his blaster. "Not this time," the rogue leader sneered. "You have no idea what you're up against, Captain. This station will be the first to fall. Then it will be the entire human colony." Zara stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. "If you think the Vkali will stand with you in this madness, you're more deluded than I thought." The rogue leader laughed bitterly. "The Vkali are already divided, Princess. You know that better than anyone." Before Lucas could react, the rogue leader pressed a button on his wrist device. The weapon's core hummed louder, and the countdown began. "We will see who survives this." Zara's eyes flicked to the terminal. "I can stop the countdown," she said, her voice steady despite the urgency. "But I need a diversion." Lucas glanced at Mara, who nodded sharply. "We'll cover you." As Zara approached the terminal, Lucas and Mara moved to intercept the rogue faction soldiers. The sound of blaster fire erupted, filling the room with tension. The air crackled with the heat of combat, but Zara remained focused on the terminal. The rogue leader charged, but Lucas blocked his path. Their eyes locked, and for a brief moment, the world slowed. The rogue leader's face was twisted with rage, but Lucas knew there was no turning back. One of them would have to fall. With a final, desperate move, Lucas lunged, taking the rogue leader to the ground. The device on the rogue's wrist shattered beneath their struggle, and the countdown stopped. Zara's voice was firm as she cut through the chaos. "It's done," she said. The room fell silent. The weapon was deactivated, but the cost had been high. The rogue faction had been defeated, but the price of peace had just become clearer than ever. The sound of silence was deafening. In the aftermath of the battle, the dim light of the station flickered overhead, casting long, distorted shadows across the now quiet room. The blaster fire had ceased, the screams of the rogue soldiers silenced by their defeat. The rogue leader, his helmet cracked and his body sprawled across the cold metal floor, lay still, another casualty in the fight for peace. Lucas Hale stood at the center of the room, breathing heavily, his mind racing with the weight of the decisions made. The station's power grid was restored, but the real battle wasn't over. No, The true war would begin now. The battle for the future of humanity, the Vkali Empire, and every race that called this galaxy home. His eyes swept over the remaining Vkali soldiers, their expressions unreadable. Behind him, Mara moved with practiced efficiency, checking the perimeter, making sure the rogue faction's last pockets of resistance had been eliminated. Zara, standing next to the control terminal, was the only one not moving with the same sense of urgency. She remained still, staring at the now-deactivated weapon. "I've disabled the weapon," Zara said, her voice almost a whisper. She turned to face Lucas, her expression unreadable. "For now, but the damage has been done. The rogue faction's message will spread." Lucas nodded, though the weight of her words settled in his chest like a stone. He had known, deep down, that disabling the weapon wouldn't stop the war from brewing. This was only the beginning, and peace would not come easily. But they had bought time to find another way forward, time to heal the fractures between their peoples. Zara moved toward him, her eyes locked on his. "You did it," she said softly, almost as though she couldn't quite believe it. "You stopped the war." "I stopped the weapon," Lucas corrected. "Stopping the war, that's up to you. Your people have to make the choice. You have to choose the future you want." She looked at him, the lines of her face softening for a moment. "And what if they won't choose peace?" Her voice was filled with quiet uncertainty, a vulnerability that Lucas hadn't seen before. For the first time since they had met, Zara didn't look like a princess playing the part of a diplomat. She looked like someone who was just as lost and afraid as he was. "You'll make them choose," Lucas said, his voice firm. "You're the one who holds the key to peace, Zara. I can't do it for you. No one can. But I know this. If you want a future for your people, for humanity, you have to fight for it." Zara's lips parted, as if she were about to say something, but the door to the control room opened with a hiss. Lucas's hand instinctively moved to his blaster, but Mara stepped into the doorway first, her face grave. "It's Admiral Klein," she said, her tone clipped. "He wants to speak with you both. It's urgent." Lucas glanced at Zara, who nodded silently, her features hardening again. She was slipping back into her role. No longer the woman who had shared a moment of vulnerability, but the leader, the symbol of a people on the brink of war. They left the room, and as they made their way down the corridors toward the command center, the tension between them thickened. It wasn't just the political stakes they had to worry about anymore. The fragile alliance they had forged, this unspoken bond, had started to shift in a direction Lucas wasn't sure he was prepared for. What would happen once they returned to their people? Would they remain allies, or would the political pressures of their respective empires tear them apart? The thought lingered in his mind, but he pushed it aside as they reached the command center. Admiral Klein was waiting, his arms folded across his chest, his face etched with concern. "Captain Princess," Klein greeted them, his voice tight. "We've received reports that the rogue faction had allies within the highest ranks of the Vkali Empire. The situation is worse than we thought." Lucas's stomach tightened. He had suspected this, but hearing it confirmed made it all the more real. "How many of them are there?" he asked. Klein glanced at Zara, his eyes betraying a flicker of hesitation. "We don't know yet. We're still gathering intelligence, but it looks like they've infiltrated key military positions. They're not just extremists, they're a faction within the heart of the Vkali leadership." Zara's expression remained unreadable, but her fists clenched. She had known this, too. The division within her empire was deep, and it was starting to show. The peace she had fought so hard for was slipping through her fingers. "How do we stop them?" Lucas asked, his voice steely. Klein met his gaze, his expression grave. "The only way to stop them now is through a public reckoning. We need to expose them, bring the truth to light. If we don't, the galaxy will descend into chaos. But that will require more than just a few soldiers. We'll need the full force of both the Earth Federation and the Vkali Empire." Zara took a step forward, her voice quiet but determined. "I'll do it. I'll expose the traitors within my own empire." Lucas turned to look at her, his brow furrowed in concern. "Are you sure? The Vkali are not a forgiving people. This could tear your empire apart." Zara nodded, her gaze steady. "My people are already divided. This has gone beyond politics. It's about the future of the galaxy. If I don't do this, everything we've worked for will fall apart. Lucas was silent for a moment, watching her. She had come so far from the princess he had first met, cold, distant, and guarded. Now, she was something more. She was a leader. Then we'll do it together, Lucas said. I'll stand by you. Zara met his eyes, and for the first time, there was a flicker of hope in them. Together, she repeated, almost as if she had forgotten what that word meant. With a final nod from Klein, the decision was made. The war for peace was not over. But for the first time, it felt like they had a real chance. As Lucas and Zara stood side by side, ready to face the challenges ahead, the weight of their responsibilities settled on their shoulders. They had saved the station. They had stopped the weapon. But the true fight, one that would decide the fate of humanity and of Kali, was just beginning. And for the first time, they were no longer enemies or allies by circumstance. They were partners bound by common cause. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with danger and sacrifice, but it was a road they would walk together. The future was theirs to shape,